Hey there! Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Francine Sinclair. I've been around the block in the entrepreneurial world, creating and repurposing social media content for experts and CEOs. I know firsthand how it can feel lonely, especially when you're mixing your Christian faith into your business life. So I figured, why should we go it alone? Who said that faith and business can't mix? And that's where this podcast comes in. Join me as we meet influential Christian entrepreneurs who are showing us how to blend business and faith in a way that works. We're here to prove that you can express your faith without compromising your business success. On the Influential Christian Entrepreneur, you're not just listening, you're part of the gang. So let's start this journey together. Welcome to the Influential Christian Entrepreneur Podcast, where we uncover the inspiring stories and strategies of successful Christian entrepreneurs. In today's episode, we have the pleasure of interviewing my friend Jay Lee, a former introvert and pastor who became a seven-figure closer. Jay Lee is a world-class high-ticket closer and sales coach. He's also known as a sales ninja and helps high-ticket coaches and entrepreneurs sell like crazy without sounding salesy, sleazy, or making prospects sleepy with boring offers using the proven glass selling method. This glass method has generated 25 million plus in client revenue and continues to empower his clients to sell more, to give more. Welcome, Jay Lee. How are you today?
I'm very well. Thanks for having me, Francine.
Thanks for coming. I am happy to see you again. It's been a while. I know we've been on Zoom before and I've interviewed you before, and I thought you would be so perfect for this podcast. I wanted to ask you more about, I know you're a high-flying sales coach and you do really well, and I'm interested in you talking a little bit about how did you become a Christian? Now, your bio says that you were introverted, and I remember you talking about how as a child you were very quiet, you were really skinny, really little, and somehow I don't recall the story about how you became a pastor and then how you got into the sales world. So can you expand on your journey into becoming a pastor and a Christian?
Absolutely. So I grew up in a Christian family in a Korean Canadian immigrant home, and born and raised in Toronto, Canada. We were quite poor because my parents, even though they were highly educated, my dad was a dairy scientist, got a full ride or scholarship in Denmark, and my mom was a nurse, had a full scholarship in Busan, which is southern part of South Korea. Just wanted to make sure that was clear, South Korea.
So the develop Busan, I was like, yeah, that's probably in Asia, but wasn't sure where.
Yeah. And so my parents met in Toronto as pen pals, which is like snail mail. So that was...
Okay, yes, that's, oh my God, that's a flashback or back to the past.
Yeah.
Our pen pals, explain that to us.
Yeah, for the people who are listening, if you don't know what that is, then it's the origin of Tinder without social media. So you have to actually handwrite letters and snail mail them with postage stamps to different parts of the world or city. And you would have to wait like days, if not weeks, and you would receive this mail and you'd be so excited because it's not a phone bill, it's not a utility bill, but it's a love letter. And they would go back and forth, and it takes time to build relationship, takes time to get the messages, not in today's the age where you get the instant DM or a chat.
Text or whatever.
Yeah. So they would have to wait, weeks to receive mail and go back and forth.
And pictures. It was in pictures. You didn't have Zoom.
No. Yeah. It was like, what do you call it? Like real printed photographs, right? There was no sending of JPEGs or, picture formats, right?
Did you ever have pen pals when you were a kid? Like, okay, it could be romantic, but it also could be like friends, right? I had pen pals in other countries. Did you ever have any?
I did. I went to a student conference, and connected with a lot of different students in high school and became pen pals with people all over the world. It was fascinating. It was so much fun to write and receive. It's an art that has been lost, I think, in this day and age.
It's been lost. I had my daughter a few years ago because I homeschooled her for the last 5 years. I had her become pen pals with a girl in Russia who was the daughter of a friend of mine, and it would take 2 weeks for them to get each each other's correspondence. And my daughter was like, why, Mom? Can't I just send her a message on Instagram? I'm like, no, write the letter in cursive. Send it in the mail.
That's so funny.
So that's how they met.
Yeah, that's how they met. And then my mom came to faith when she was in nursing from a missionary from Texas. And my dad was not a believer. And he, growing up, he was a very kind of an angry kind of a person because he was one of 12 children. My parents were very poor growing up. My mom was poor. My dad was dirt poor. When they say, I walked 5 miles to get to school and didn't have shoes. And like that was literally my dad. He lived in the mountains and his shoes were in such bad shape that he would put cardboard insoles, because he had holes in the bottom of his shoes. And in the winter, he had to protect his feet. And at nights, because they had no food, he would have to go to the neighbor's farm in the middle of the night with no lights and take a satchel or a bag and dig with his hands to get some potatoes, to get some sort of, food to feed the 12 children, right?
Wow, that sounds like my dad. He was in the South, in the South Jim Crow era. Similar, very similar, had to go and find chickens out there or something. And he was the oldest. So he would have to help my grandmother because my grandfather was, I don't know where he was, and feed all the other children because there were 9 of them. So
wow.
Story that people, I think kids here in the States today can't really relate to those stories. They sound so remote.
No.
It's only like one generation before us.
That's right. And then on my mom's side, my mom had 2 siblings and they both died. One of them died drowning in a pool and the other one had some sort of like measles or smallpox. But because they were so poor, they couldn't afford the medication. So that could have easily been alleviated and reversed if they had the finances. But she lost both of her siblings. So she became an only child. And my grandmother, so my mom's mom, had to work 3 jobs, one in the fish market, one in the hospital as a janitor. And she was weaving baskets just to make ends meet. So
they met in Toronto while they were in college or in school?
Yeah, they had to go back to school because even though they had education in nursing and dairy science, when they came to Canada, that wasn't recognized. So they had no friends, they didn't know the language, and they had to go back to school while working and in a language that they didn't understand. So they had to re-educate and get their degrees and then, work from the bottom up again. So there was no free handouts growing up. The work ethic was instilled at a very, very early age because, when you get like a 94% on an exam, which would be a very good mark, they'd be like, where's the 6%? Right? So there was just this constant performance driven.
That's common in Asian families, right? You got to always get to the max. Is that true?
It is. I mean, it was like because of the hardship that they faced, they didn't come and sacrifice everything to a brand new country with a brand new language with no friends so that we could just pass, right? You had to be the best, number one, or get 100% or as close to it. So perfection was a standard and the work ethic. And you look at different companies and all, I'm diverting a little bit, but you look at like Hyundai 30 years ago, people laughed at the first car, the Pony. And you look now and it's competing with Mercedes, Lexus, BMW, and some may argue it's even better for a better price because they worked so hard to continue to make it better and better and better. And that's kind of like my whole upbringing is I may not be the smartest, I might not be the fastest, I might not be the tallest, all these things, but I will not quit and I will continue to learn and get better and better and better.
And you will work till nothing is going to stop you. And for sure, that's guaranteeing your success.
In fact, if people do say that, you're not going to amount to anything or you're never going to become this and that gives me fuel to fire to say, watch me.
Watch me. So you were like this I remember saying you're a little tiny boy and you were very introverted. But thanks to that work ethic that your parents instilled in you, you became successful. But there's a big in between there. You graduated from college, I'm assuming, and then you went into becoming a pastor, or did you get a 9-to-5 job?
Yeah. So after I graduated from university, and then I went to a post-diploma in college. So I studied marketing and science and business, marketing and sales. But then my first job was in the banking industry, credit card services. So that was for 5 years. And the short story of me coming from an introvert to an extrovert, from someone who would not have the courage to talk to people or stand up or even ask my high school crush to the prom and so many other stories, to becoming an evangelist to becoming an extrovert was in my last year of high school. My parents sent me off to Long Island, New York from Toronto, and I went there to play volleyball and, just kind of goof off with my friends. But it was a Christian conference. Back then it was called Campus Crusade for Christ. Now it's called Power to Change. And so I went to all the sessions. I went and skipped all the sessions, and I ended up going to the last session. And then there was a lady who was sharing her testimony, and I was just like, whatever. But when I heard the story, the power of the story, and this is where I think sales came at an early start with the story selling, when she was selling her story, and she was sharing the highlight of the hero story, which is Jesus. And I was like, I really want to know this person. Like, I always looked at faith or, Christianity as a religion, as something you do, something you must do, something that you should do. But I realized when she was sharing her story, it's not religion, it's a relationship. And so when I got that, it clicked in my spirit and my heart. And then I accepted Jesus into my life. And like a supernatural miracle or a supernatural occurrence, the third person, which is God, the Father, Jesus, the Son, and the third person of the Trinity is the Holy Spirit, basically filled me from head to toe. And I was weeping uncontrollably. And I was just like, for guys and even Asian culture, crying is a sign of weakness, right? And I was just like so embarrassed. But there was something so beautiful because God's love was lavishing my heart and forgiving my sin. And I was so overwhelmed with a tsunami wave of love. My friend Joe, who was beside me, that I was skipping all my sessions with and playing volleyball with, I was like, "You have to know this amazing love of God!" And it was like a fireball of just passion. And you got to remember, I'm like tearing up, and I got snot all over, and I look like a mess, and I'm like, God's amazing, and he's like, "What the hell? What the hell?" I mean. Yeah, and not the what the heaven, but what the hell? What happened to you? Are you possessed? I'm like, yeah, by the Holy Spirit. And he's like, get away from me, you freak. And you got to know the love of God. And let's just say, it's safe to say he didn't come to faith in Christ that day. He got scared, but he did eventually come to Jesus. And long story, I scared him. And fast forward, I was able to help in pastoral ministry as a regional evangelist for Canada, equip and train over 2,500 people. Campus ministers, student leaders, church planters, growing pastors. So 2,500 people equipped, 40,000 conversations, and over 10,000 professions of faith in Christ.
You helped with that. Wow.
Yeah.
So can you say that you have earned heaven already?
No, because heaven is not earned. If you look at scriptures, it says, it is by grace you have been saved through faith. It is a gift of God, not by works, which is earning. So that no one can boast. So grace, let me just share a quick example of grace and mercy.
Yes, please explain, because, not everybody who listens to this podcast is fluent in the language that we use, including myself.
Yeah, Christianese.
It goes over our head. So, yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, Christianese, simplified or dumbed down, is there's grace and mercy. And we use this language a lot, but I think a lot of us, including myself, did not understand what it meant. So when people say, Lord have mercy, the analogy is if you were speeding on the freeway or the highway and you were going, let's say 100 miles over the speed limit, which would be like really catastrophic, right? Because you could actually hurt someone, destroy your car, et cetera, et cetera. And then the police officer stops over and says, did you know that you were going 100 miles over the speed limit? And you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. You can say something like, I'm going to the hospital because my wife's having a baby, and have some sort of excuse, right? Mercy would be when the police officer says, oh, well, maybe I can give you an escort. Don't worry about the ticket. I won't charge you because I'll let you off this time because you have an emergency. So mercy is, even though you violated and broke the law, he or she is going to let you off by not giving you that ticket and you not paying that fine. Mercy in the Christian world is when God decides not to make you pay the price, right? And he'll let you off. Grace is when the police officer says, you know what, you violated, Francine, the law, the highway regulations, and your car needs to be impounded, your license must be taken away, and you need to be suspended from any kind of driving for at least 3 months. And then the hefty fine of $3,000 or whatever, right? So I cannot take that fine. I cannot take away that violation from you because you committed that violation, which means you sinned against God. And there's no way that you can get off today because you have to pay the price. But what I'm going to do as an officer to show grace is I'm going to pay the fine for you. The police officer, no one is going to ever do that. And that's what God did is, if there's a bullet that was coming our way and someone jumps in front of us, he's going to take the bullet for us. And that's why in the gospel, we call it the great exchange. Is Jesus took the bullet for you. He took that fine, that ticket, and paid the price for you and me so that we don't have to. And so our response is eternal gratitude and a life living for him, not because we earned heaven or a way to God, but because what he has done. It's not what we do. It's because what he has done on the cross. And in fact, in the Arabic, it says tetelestai. It is finished. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to work harder. You don't need to pray more. You don't need to go to church and be religious. You don't need to keep being a good Samaritan. It is already done on the cross. And we do these amazing things, acts of love, acts of service, acts of giving because of what he has done. And that's grace.
Gratitude.
Yes.
Okay. So that clarifies a lot because I thought you had to do a lot of work to get to heaven. I mean, yeah, that's what I guess a lot of people think, right?
Yeah, there is no amount of work that you can do to earn your way, because in scriptures it also says, be perfect, therefore, as I am perfect. And I don't know about you, but I'm far from perfect. And that's why Jesus is the perfect sacrifice. They call him the lamb, that's the perfect, unblemished, untainted, untarnished, sinless sacrifice. And perfection, because we don't have it. God had to bring his son with no plan B, no contingency plan, to sacrifice and lay all of sin from humanity, beginning of time, and all of history, which is the sin and the wrath of God coming and striking that sin and killing it, so that we could have life eternal and life filled with abundance.
Otherwise, we would never be able to make it there without Christ. That's
right. And John 14:6 says, I am the way, the truth, the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So he has made a way, and I'm grateful that he has made a way. And there's nothing that you and I can do to earn it, but he has already made a way.
And all we have to do is accept Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Absolutely. So how did you make the leap from pastor to super salesman, business, seven-figure guy?
It's a funny story, but it's desperation. It's because as a pastor and evangelist and missionary for 10 years, I had no plan to leave the pastoral ministry, if that makes sense, because I felt called to it. So I'm like, this is my life. And growing up, with a kind of poverty mindset, and then family and friends and people in ministry saying, you are taking a vow to poverty. You cannot own these things. You cannot have nicer things. So I was like, okay, that was kind of instilled in my brain, my heart, my spirit that, I cannot have these things. I cannot own these things. And, money is evil, right? So, but I learned that was wrong, and that the love of all money is the root of all evil, not money in itself. And when I was able to have more money, I was able to give more. In fact, after starting my sales coaching business, I was able to give more in 1 year than my entire lifetime. Right. And so how do I pivot? So as a missionary, I had to raise my own support, financial support. And that was running out in the 9th and 10th year. So I was trying to figure out how to live in Toronto, where the average house for a 3-bedroom bungalow is like $1.5 million. Right. And it's not even a nice house. It's like you got to redo it, re-renovate it. And so I looked at some sort of ad, I think, on Facebook, and it was some sort of guru or expert growth consultant. And he was, I think, driving a Lamborghini, one of those ads. And I was like, wow, he looks really successful, right? He must be doing really well. If I can learn what he does, then I will be successful too. So in my foolishness, I just did a quick video, which kind of was just out of desperation. I didn't know what else to do. And I said, if it was you, hey, Francine, I just saw your ad. Looks like you're doing really well in your business. I'm a pastor. I don't know anything about business and what you do. But if you would give me a chance, I would love to be your right-hand man to continue to help you in your success. If you have any openings, or if I can help do anything that you want me to do to help you continue to grow, please reach out to me and I'd be open for a conversation. And then within 45 minutes, he messaged me back and he says, well, you have a lot of guts. He said something else, but he said, you have a lot of guts. And we got on a Zoom call.
Guts, or was it desperation?
Yeah, both. It was both. And he said, you don't know anything. You don't know this business. And, he's got a very successful business and you're reaching out to me because what? And I just said, listen, I'm a good listener and I can learn quickly. And when I learn something quickly, I can master it and help you continue in your success. So whatever you don't like to do, whatever you want off your hands, or if you, want to buy more time, then give those tasks to me. And he goes, deal. So I didn't even realize he lived in Toronto, which is where I live. He says,
Gosh, really?
yeah, I didn't even know. And then it must be a localized targeted ad, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And
What
so
year was this? Around what
it
year?
was like 5 years ago.
Oh, only 5 years ago?
Yeah, not that long ago. And so he says, come to my home or my place tomorrow. And this was like a Sunday night. And I'm like, sure. Okay. I'll put my money where my mouth is. And I went to his house, and then you can imagine my wife. I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to this stranger's house that I met on the internet that I sent a video through a paid ad. And I'm going to try to learn what he's doing. And she's like, what on earth are you doing? Where are you going? Why are you doing this? And so here I'm thinking, okay, if I don't come back, just tell the kids I love them and put on my tombstone 2 words, loved much. Because I don't know if I'm going to get kidnapped or if I'm going to get shot or, And so I go in there, and he's on the penthouse suite. He lives like this lavish life. He was doing probably like $500,000 to $1 million a year. And then I jumped on the phones, not the phones. I jumped into the things that he was doing and learning quickly. And I wrote hundreds of pages of notes. For 3 months, I went to his house every single day, and I learned, because I'm a kinesthetic visual learner. So I learned by seeing, I learned by doing. And then, I might be slow at the beginning, but once I get it, boom, click, bam. And then he started putting me on the phone saying, hey, I'm going to throw some leads to you. Let's see if you can close some deals. And then right out the gate, I think I closed $105,000 in the first month.
Oh, wow. So you just got on the phone, and even though you had never done any sales before.
I didn't even know the vernacular. I didn't even know the language. I'm like, what's MRR? What's CPL? What's lifetime value? What is I had no clue. And so he was like just throwing the leads out to me to kind of see if in the deep end I could learn how to swim.
And you did learn how to swim. Was it really scary when he threw the leads at you and you got that first phone call? Were you like sweating bullets? Or?
Oh, yeah. I was probably having a panic attack or something. Because my former self, which is an introvert, was like kicking in high gear. And then because I didn't know what I was talking about, then I remembered the presentations I did when I was in elementary school where I froze, or when I tried to ask the high school crush to the prom, I froze, right? Or the time that my parents asked me to tell the police not to give us a ticket when we were parked illegally downtown because they were trying to get some cold cut meats for their sandwich shop, and I froze. So my past was playing back in the present during that sales call, and I was probably sweating, and they were probably like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like,
on Zoom or?
It was on Zoom. It was on Zoom. And I said, if I'm being completely honest with you, I don't really know what I'm talking about. This is my first call. And if you can just be very gracious and merciful, grace and mercy, I'll do my best to answer any of your questions. And they kind of laughed and said, that's really refreshing because we've been on like 4 or 5 other calls with other people who were the exact opposite. They were confident, they were cocky, they were making promises that seemed too good to be true. Yeah. And you claim to know nothing.
Yet you're trying to sell me on something you know nothing about. Okay.
Yeah, but I said, I will get the answers for you because the founder is right beside me. And so whatever you ask me, I'll just ask him.
So you were just being honest.
I was being honest and vulnerable, which I didn't have to do, but I felt out of desperation, I needed to just so that they can just let me off the hook.
Wow. And then I would imagine that as you did more calls, it got easier and easier.
Well, I closed that first call.
What?
Right. And so the founder was like, what? You don't even know anything and you close that call. And then more recently, when I was closing for a high ticket 2 Comma Club award health coach, similar story where he hired me on Sunday. And then he said, we're going to take 2 to 4 weeks to ramp you up and onboard you and train you and get you familiar with the product, with the service, with the pay links, all this stuff. And then I'm like, good. I probably need about 2 to 4 weeks to get ramped up. And then they booked a call for me next morning, Monday at 9 a.m. for a sales call. And I was like, this is 4 years later, exact same deja vu of my first call. And I'm like, why did you book a call? Anyway, so I'm on this call and I say, hey, I just want to let you know that this is my first day on the call and I know nothing about this product and I don't even know how much the pricing is, but I want you to know that I'm going to do my best to serve you and answer any questions that you have through the Slack channel with my team members. And they laughed and said, we've been on 3 calls with 3 other people that were the exact opposite because they were confident, and they were salesy and they were aggressive and they were pushing me to the sale. And you're so refreshing to say that you know very little to nothing.
So the same exact experience.
It was exact same experience. And then I said, let me answer that question. Let me ask this question. This is what they said. This is what they said. This is how to answer your question because I don't know. And then they're like, at the end, I'm like, I feel like I'm mixed up and upside down because I'm just so confused because I've never heard the offering and the pricing and all this stuff. And I said, so that'll be like whatever, $10,000 for this 90-day program. And I'm like, did that sound right? And inside my head, I'm like having this inner talk. Did I even make sense? And did they even understand what I'm saying? And they're like, well, I'm going to be your first sale today. And they closed. And then I found out from the health coach later, because I went to his house, we went to some sort of meeting. And then he said, that first call that we threw at you, we were just trying to, throw a bone at you and just make, let you have some fun and
mess with you. Yeah.
Yeah, mess with me. Right. And I said, did you know I closed that deal? He goes, what? How did you close that deal without even knowing what we were doing? And I'm like, it was really hard.
Oh my gosh. Like some people would say you're the luckiest guy alive.
Mm-hmm.
I would faint.
Yeah, they say, because I take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, they say on the backdrop, a black belt is a white belt that never gave up.
That's a good one. A black belt is a white belt that never gave up.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the theme of your life. And so now you're this highly, I guess, thought out sales closer for high ticket coaches. I'm sure there's probably a wait list to work with you because they know you can get the deals closed and you don't have a clone, right? So it's just you.
So I do have a waiting list of probably over 100, 150 people that want me to close for them. I am no longer able to close for them because I'm doing high ticket sales coaching. So I get asked almost on a daily, can you close for me? Or I get DMs from these like 2 comma club or even 8-figure plus coaches saying, I heard that you're a rock star closer. I would love to get you on my team to help close. And they're like amazing offers, higher commissions than normal. And I'm like, I can't. Someone was offering me 40% versus 10, which is the industry standard. And they were doing, I think they were doing 50,000 at the time. And then a year or 2 years later, they were doing $500,000 a month, right, to close to $1 million a month. So I would have made a lot of money. Let's just say that. But I refused because I said, I don't have the bandwidth. I don't have the time.
Because now you're a sales coach. You're not closing for people anymore?
I'm not closing for people anymore. I am teaching people how to sell because for 2 or 3.5 years, people kept begging me, how do you close and, close 81% close rates? How do you get 96% cash collected rate? How do you get 94% show up rate? All these different things. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't even know that was a thing. I'm just trying to figure this out myself.
So you're teaching people how to do the job you used to do so that in a way to clone yourself so that they can serve more people. So
exactly.
You're multiplying yourself as best.
Yeah, it's discipleship of sales. And, one thing that people have been asking me that I'm thinking about doing in the near future, and I'll say it here, is some sort of sales academy where let's say I train 100 lethal sales ninja assassins and kind of outsource them to people like you who want a sales ninja vetted closer who's gone through like, let's say 50 to 100 hours of training. They've been in the dojo. They've been going through handling objections, building rapport, not sounding salesy through the frameworks and the approach that I use. That's something that I'm looking at in the future as well.
In the future. Perfect. I didn't know you had stopped closing. So good to know. So what the premise of this podcast is, we've always been told not to mix our faith with business. Is it okay as far as, for you, is it okay to mix your faith with your business? Do you do it or do you maintain a clear line between, your faith and your business?
That is a great question. We can build a whole series on this and a podcast on this. But the short answer for me is why not? And I would even go further and say, absolutely yes. I have friends, family, even people in ministry that say you should separate and even compartmentalize the home or the work and your faith. But I look at faith as a part of every area of our lives. And it's integrated and seamless in a way that says whether you are sweeping floors or whether you're leading employees of 10,000 or more, every work is for the glory of God. Everything that we do is whether we eat, whether we drink, whether we work, whether we sleep, everything is for the glory of God. So we need to remember that the work that God has given us is we are to put our hands to the plow and a worker earns his or her wage by producing wealth. And my whole slogan is sell more to give more. So we make a lot of money so that we can give as much of it as away.
So that's how you use your business as a ministry. In another way, you sell more so that you can give away more. So that is how you incorporate God into your business, because you're creating wealth so that you can help more people. As far as with your personal brand, now your personal brand is all about the ninja. Do you ever incorporate scripture into your posts, into your content? Do you ever talk about God openly, or are you the type of person that does it on the back end by what you do and doing more instead of saying more? That's
a great question. So, when you look at musicians or you look at all these incredible influencers and marketers, a lot of them don't mention God, and they're like achieving this amazing success, like, 7, 8, 9, 10 figures. And then you find out later through a post or through a story that they actually are a person of faith. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was the cool covert way of getting more, influence, and it is what it is there. So I thought maybe that's what I should do. But then I thought, I want to be who I am, and I want to be authentic to myself. And because I always try to lead with faith first, mm-hmm. I decided I don't want to just do what I think will help me gain more followers or gain me more influence or get me more money. Let me do me. Let me be me. So I basically, in my LinkedIn, I have a newsletter. I have a weekly devotion. So every single week, there's a devotion that goes out. Guess when? Sundays. So it's a devotion of faith and scripture every single week. And then in my teaching, in my calls, in my training, it's all from a biblical framework.
Okay.
So everything I do, everything I say, and the options that I get, I'm able to pray for more people in my business than I have in my ministry as a pastor.
That's incredible. It's good to see how everybody has their own way of doing it based on their personality, based on their business. And of course, you have to be authentic to yourself and not just if what someone else is doing works for them, but we can hit it together. We can hit it from all different types of angles. So I love the idea of sending out your devotion on Sundays, and then that essentially your whole business is based on a foundation of, God. So that's really nice. I enjoyed your story so much. I didn't know some of the details. I had heard part of your story, but I didn't know all these other details, especially how you had that first call happen 4 years later, the same thing. That was kind of like a message, I feel. And it's really inspiring. And I think that part of the way that we Christians can inspire other people who may be non-believers or people who is by telling our story. Because when we speak in the first person, it doesn't feel churchy. It doesn't feel pushy. You're just putting a message out there and planting seeds. And I think that's part of what we're supposed to do as Christians.
I agree. And I think a lot of people may refuse God, church, Christianity, religion, whatever you call it, and even the gospel message. But one thing they cannot refuse or refute is your testimony, which is your story with a God narrative and how he changed or transformed your life. People can say and argue that God doesn't exist or the Bible is not true, but when you share your story, which is your personal transformation, they can't say, "Oh, that's not true." You're like,
"That's not true."
Right. I think there's no way. It's irrefutable.
It is. I think that in today's day, it is probably one of the better approaches. So I want to thank Jay Lee, my friend, for being here today and spending time with us and telling us about his amazing story and his transformation and how God has worked literally miracles in his life. And I want to thank everybody for being here today. Now, Jay Lee, if someone wanted to contact you, what would be the best way to do that?
They can reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook, and I'll send you all my contact information. And if people are open to learning more, I have a couple of events that are coming up where they can learn for free how to sell more to give more.
Okay, so they would pull you up on Facebook by Jay Lee and maybe type in Sales Ninja.
Yep.
There's probably quite a few Jay Lees, but if you type in Sales Ninja, you might come up, or LinkedIn might be easier also.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of The Influential Christian Entrepreneur. And we will see you again next week with a new episode. Take care. Bye.
If you're a Christian business leader or executive, I invite you to work with me to create a faith-driven personal brand on LinkedIn that will empower you to navigate the intersection between faith and business. Feel free to contact me directly at hello@francineSinclair.com.
I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening today. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and don't forget to follow me, Francine Sinclair, on Facebook or LinkedIn. See you next week for a new episode.